There's no seat for poor people. So get out.
Subcontractors are out of place here.
The two of them said, giggling. Indeed, our factory is a subcontractor. But I cannot accept being looked down upon like this. Understood.
If you understand, then good. Poor bottom feeders should disappear quickly.
Yes, of course. Then, I will take my leave. I maintained my usual business smile towards them. Trying hard not to show my anger, I quickly left the venue.
Justin.
Huh? As I left the venue, a man called out to me. He looked at me with a puzzled expression.
Why are you here? The reception hasn't even started yet.
Actually, I explained the whole situation to him.
I see. This time it's entirely their fault. You can do as you like, Justin. Now and in the future as well.
Surprisingly, he gave me permission to handle things my way. Then, on the day of the business meeting, I'm sorry, but we no longer intend to do business with you.
What?
I had decided to cancel a contract worth $200 million. My name is Justin Timberlake, a 33-year-old factory owner living happily with my beloved wife and children. Originally, the factory belonged to my father-in-law, Thomas. Due to family circumstances, I started working right after high school, and by chance, it was at my father-in-law's factory. Trying to get accustomed to the work as soon as possible, I was working hard when...
Are you the new guy?
I'm not sure what you mean by the new guy, but yes, I am new here.
I've heard about you. It seems you are doing quite well.
At that, I was favored by my father-in-law who happened to visit the factory. From then on, he took me under his wing, and I started learning the business directly from him.
Justin, you don't have a girlfriend, do you?
No, not at the moment.
If that's the case, I would like to introduce you to my daughter.
And so, a few years later, I was introduced to Catherine, who would become my wife. Wait, you like that character too?
Yes, I do. I never thought you liked it too.
Despite some age difference, we hit it off right away. After about 3 years of dating, we got married. During those blissful times, my father-in-law fell ill. Luckily, I was there to call an ambulance right away, which saved his life.
I had a chronic illness. Well, I've seen my daughter in her wedding dress, and a successor has appeared. Honestly, I have no regrets.
He would say, but we weren't ready to let him go. It's too soon for farewells, so both the family and the factory staff united to support him. Eventually, my father-in-law Thomas managed to pull through and was even able to return to the factory. Still, there was always the fear of him collapsing again, so I took over running the factory. Having been working since high school and having learned beside him after he took a liking to me, I had the experience. However, the early days were certainly a struggle. Phew, I'm exhausted.
Are you okay? You're not overdoing it?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's tough, but I want to live up to Thomas's expectations. Being a young manager, I was sometimes underestimated, and there were nasty clients who tried to take advantage of that. Catherine's presence and my father-in-law's trust allowed me to keep pushing forward. And just as I was getting accustomed to the job,
Justin, actually.
Catherine was pregnant. My father-in-law Thomas said,
I never thought I'd be able to hold a grandchild.
I watched him tear up with joy with a warm smile. With the birth of my precious daughter Yasmin, I was even more motivated to boost the factory's success. This also led me to find my own unique approach, different from my father-in-law's. As a result of overcoming various challenges, I have been able to find happiness again. One day, I received news that the director at our client company, the main contractor, had changed. At a time like this, what happened to the previous director? I couldn't help but wonder. The former director had dealings with our factory, and we had a fairly close relationship. He was still in his 40s, and I hadn't heard of any illnesses, so retirement seemed unlikely. He was such a good person. I thought perhaps he had been promoted, but the timing was oddly abrupt. So, I contacted an acquaintance at the client company. What? He was fired. I was shocked to hear that the former director had been dismissed. I asked for more details, but it seems even they didn't know the reason. However, they were told by the new director that it was because he caused a significant loss. What kind of person is this new director? Surprisingly, the new director is still in his 20s. Why so young? I wondered, and it turns out the president's daughter is involved. The president's daughter, Megan Ziegler, is the only child of George Ziegler. As such, the president dotes on her, and practically her word is law. And what does Megan have to do with the change in directors? Megan and the new director was dating, and it was speculated that they might have orchestrated the downfall of the former director to take over his position. Or so, rumor has it. After hearing all this, I thanked my acquaintance for sharing the information and ended the call. Regardless of the truth, it's an unsettling story. I felt conflicted. I really owed a lot to the former director. To think it has come to this. While pondering this, I contacted the new director to say I'd be coming by to greet him soon. Just to be safe, I also informed my father-in-law.
Such a thing happened. I'll look into it. Justin, focus on your work.
He said with a complicated expression, much like mine. The next day, having received no reply about the greeting, I went about my work as usual. Just as my father-in-law used to do, I made my rounds in the factory.
Excuse me for interrupting.
At that moment, a man appeared. Both I and the factory employees tilted our heads, wondering who he could be.
I'm the new director, Henry Smith.
You are. The new director, Henry Smith, came across with an air of authority as he said so. Despite recognizing him as the infamous new director, I greeted him professionally.
Even though I came all this way to you, you can't even offer me a cup of coffee.
Henry complained without proper greeting. I smiled wryly and replied apologetically, "I'm sorry, I wasn't thoughtful enough," and apologized repeatedly. From experience, I know it's best to apologize and not stir up the self-esteem of such people. That way, they'll be satisfied and let it go on their own.
It seems you understand your place well.
He finally said, contentedly. Unlike the former director who would smile gently and say hi, "How are you?" Henry crossed his arms and surveyed a factory. Watching him, I wondered if the rumors about him were true when
Justin, someone's here. A guest?
Catherine came with Yasmin. I remembered she said she would visit today.
Catherine?
Is that Henry?
Henry looked shocked. Catherine too seemed surprised, and then her expression turned quizzical.
Is that kid yours? Huh, so the factory daughter married some low-life worker here.
Sorry, that's none of your business, actually.
Seeing Catherine holding a child, Henry sneered. She easily dodged his taunt and stood beside me.
By the way, he's my husband.
She said while handing Yasmin to me. I took her with a smile, feeling a sharp glare from Henry.
You regret marrying a subcontractor from your own home, don't you?
But his mocking face changed quickly, and I reassured myself it was just my imagination. His words were incredibly condescending. I was internally frustrated by his disrespectful remarks about Catherine, but I held it in because I was holding Yasmin.
Luckily for me, I'm incredibly happy with him.
Catherine said with a beaming smile. At that, my irritation faded, replaced by a grin of happiness.
Tisk, what a waste of time,
said Henry, clicking his tongue and then leaving the factory. What did he even come for? An acquaintance.
We had a brief thing in high school. It's irrelevant now.
Is that so? Seeing Catherine make a face as if she didn't want to remember, I didn't ask any further. Still, it's troublesome that such a person has become the director. Considering future dealings, I was worried. Soon after, a major project involving several companies was set to start. Our factory held a critical position. Everyone at the factory was enthusiastic.
Justin, you have a phone call?
It was Megan, the president's daughter, on the line. Thank you for waiting. This is Justin.
Hello. I hear you were rude to my future husband.
I was momentarily dumbfounded and let out an awkward huh. I remember being treated that way, but I didn't reciprocate. Though I had no such recollections, the caller was the president's beloved only daughter. I'm very sorry for any discomfort caused. I apologized out of caution. To which Megan responded,
He is not like you subcontractors. Show respect to him, the future president.
She said this unilaterally and then hung up the phone. Could she really have called just to say that? As I was still taken aback, a contact from the client called. What's up? A reception. Apparently, to facilitate smooth progress on the project, a reception was being organized to foster interaction between the companies involved. They were supposed to inform each company by phone and email, but Megan had insisted. I'll handle the call to that factory. The caller had watched her closely during the call and noted that she complained without mentioning the important details and then ended the call. So, it seems they reached out again afterward. Thank you very much for that. To omit such crucial information, Megan seems like a handful. Grateful for the call, I checked my schedule. I had almost made other plans. I wonder if both of them will come to the reception. I'd rather not meet them if possible. I sighed involuntarily. Then, on the day of the reception, I arrived at the venue a bit early. Not many had arrived yet, and only a few people were chatting.
What? Why is this low-life poor person here?
Henry, who had spotted me, started causing trouble. Megan was by his side, looking down at me and laughing.
How dare you show up here? Poor people are so presumptuous.
Really? All respectable companies here, and you're the only subcontractor.
Is that so? I'm sorry, I need to greet others as well. I tried to avoid them, but they kept pestering me. People at the venue started giving us strange looks because of our interaction. As I pondered what to do about the unwanted attention, Henry suddenly pushed my shoulder.
Poor people don't belong here. Get out.
Subcontractors are out of place here.
The two laughed mockingly. Indeed, our factory is a subcontractor. But I cannot accept being looked down upon like this. Understood.
Good. Poor lowlifes should disappear quickly.
Yes, of course. Then, I will take my leave. I maintained my usual business smile towards them. Trying hard not to show my anger, I left the venue quickly.
Justin.
Huh? As I was leaving the venue, a man called out to me. He looked at me with a puzzled expression. That man was George Ziegler, Megan Ziegler's real father, and the president of the client company. You arrived early, George.
I heard you were attending, so I thought I'd come and talk about him.
Him, referring to my father-in-law, I suppose. I've heard that my father-in-law and George have been associates since the company was founded. Well, since I took over, I haven't had much interaction with George himself.
Why are you here? The reception hasn't even started yet.
Actually, I explained the whole situation to him. I spoke candidly, though I thought it might be futile. But I wanted to believe in him, as my father-in-law did. After hearing my story, George sighed deeply.
I see. This is entirely their fault. You can do as you like, Justin. Now and in the future as well.
Oh yeah, that means. Before I could finish, it seemed George had understood. He nodded firmly.
I'll leave it to you, and you won't be held responsible.
He assured me, and I decided to take action as I saw fit.
So, what are you doing about the reception?
I need to discuss future matters, so I will be leaving.
I see. Sorry for the trouble this time.
He said, nodded lightly. Then he handed me a piece of paper.
Take some time to rest.
George said as he entered the venue. After seeing him off, I opened the paper he had given me. It had the former director's name and phone number on it. Hello, it's been a while. This is Justin Timberlake. I immediately made a call, and although the former director was a bit surprised, he listened to me. After discussing various things about the future, I made a decision. I need to go back and let Thomas know, I muttered as I hurried home. A little while later,
You made me look bad.
I got a call from Henry, and he complained. People at the reception were suspicious about my absence. It seems George had asked Megan. I heard Henry sent him home. Megan couldn't answer, but the other attendees testified.
Because of that, we were on pins and needles.
But it's a fact that you guys sent me home, isn't it?
True, but
Henry, surprised by my retort since I usually didn't talk back, fell silent. Just a little pushback, and he had nothing to say. It seems his mental toughness was weaker than I expected. That's all, then, goodbye, I said and hung up. Then I turned to my father-in-law, Thomas. So, I'm thinking of dropping out of this project.
Well, I've left the factory to you, so do as you like. Honestly, I might have lost my temper and lashed out by now. Justin, you really are thoughtful.
After our discussion, I decided to cancel the contract on the deal day. On the deal day, an obviously upset director awaited me.
we're busy here. Just sign this contract already.
There is no need. The contract will be canceled.
What?
Henry looked dumbfounded. But then he laughed scornfully.
Try it if you think you can. If you do that, your factory will go under.
Don't worry. If anyone will regret it, it will be you, I said with a smile, and he continued to laugh mockingly. I greeted to him and left the company.
Justin?
Megan called out to me, her expression much darker than at the reception.
After hearing about you from my father.
It seems George had told his daughter the truth. Maybe she was lectured to because she looked quite downcast.
I apologize for my rude behavior.
Megan said, apologizing deeply. I was taken aback by her apology and just stared at her wide-eyed. In response, she gives a wry smile.
Well, I'll be going then.
I could only watch as she walked away. Could it be that Megan? I had some idea of what was going on, but I quickly composed myself, knowing it wasn't my place to get involved. I greeted to some acquaintances there and left the company. A few hours later, while I was working as usual at the factory, I received a call from Henry. It's been a while. What's up?
Sign the contract now.
Why are you in such a hurry? I asked, though I knew why he was panicking.
Without your factory, the entire project falls apart.
Indeed, the project hinged on a patent I held. which distinguished my approach from my father-in-law's. After extensive research, I developed a unique product and secured a patent that benefited our factory.
If we don't have that, the whole project goes back to square one. If that happens, I'm the one who has to take the blame.
That's tough, but it's impossible now. I've already signed with someone else, I told him, which left him speechless. This time, I burst into laughter. On the day of the reception, the former director had told me about his new company setup.
Actually, George is backing me. Would you like to contract with us?
The former director had been harassed by Henry. Despite attempting to escalate issues, Megan always squashed his complaints. Facing his own downfall, he decided to resign before collapsing, and was approached by George, who suggested establishing a subsidiary. Given the circumstances, I decided to sign with the former director's new company.
Fooling around. If we can't contract with your factory, it's a $200 million loss.
Can't be helped, I replied and hung up. I thought I heard Henry scream in the background, but I ignored it. Back to work, I muttered to myself and carried on with my tasks. Shortly thereafter, everything unfolded.
I look forward to working with you.
Megan said as she arrived at our factory. After being disowned by her father, George, and resigning from the company, she had nowhere else to go, so we took her in.
Nice to meet you, Megan.
Yes, thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Although George adored Megan, it wasn't in the way of indulging her every whim. He raised her with great care, and as a result, she grew up naive, easily influenced by others, particularly by Henry.
I've never really dated anyone before.
She confessed that she had been manipulated by Henry into maintaining such an attitude because that's how he said a president's daughter should behave. Even though George was aware, he was too busy with his presidential duties and dealing with people like Henry to intervene. Consequently, everyone assumed Megan could do whatever she wanted because she was so doted on.
Recently, he told me to ask my father to help him. And when I did, I was given a choice to resign myself or have him take the responsibility and resign.
So, Megan consulted Henry about it. In response, Henry apparently ordered her to resign for his sake, then informed her that she was no longer needed.
I thought I had no place left. Why did you accept me?
I understand a bit of what you feel.
What?
I had lost my parents in an accident as a child. My aunt and uncle, who took me in, always called me a nuisance, a burden. I never felt like I belonged. That's why I chose to work right after high school. But my father-in-law found me and gave me a place in this factory. Catherine, my wife, gave me the love I hadn't received before.
I see.
All I want is to do for you what made me happy back then. If you feel like you have no place, our factory will welcome you. If you work hard, you'll surely find someone who can give you the love you deserve. Megan, nodding to my words. I pretended not to notice the tears streaming from her eyes. She has since changed significantly, working earnestly at the factory. Her pure nature made her well liked, especially among the older women who enthusiastically claimed they would make a good woman out of her. She'll be all right.
Good. That's a relief.
When I reported her condition to George, he visibly relaxed and a smile spread across his face. The project eventually was taken over by a subsidiary, minimizing losses. Despite the potential for a $200 million loss, George chose not to punish the two responsible too harshly. Instead, he gave them a choice that also tested Henry's true intentions.
It was good to leave it in your hands.
Then he begged me to take in Megan, who had been fired. Initially, I hesitated to accept her, as she had joined Henry in mocking me, but I found myself feeling some sympathy for her. That's why I decided to take her in.
Please look after my daughter from now on.
Sure, she can work without reserve, I replied with a smile to George's words. A while later, I received a message from an acquaintance that Henry had resigned. Although Megan's sacrifice saved him from being fired, the story somehow leaked, and he was always looked at disdainfully by everyone at the company. Though he wasn't fired, he was sidelined to a dead-end apartment, and eventually couldn't stand it anymore and quit.
He had some skills, though.
Despite his personality, Henry apparently had some skills. So, George really had intended to groom him as a future president, but getting carried away, he caused this fiasco. Maybe I aggravated his rampage. Actually, Henry and my wife Catherine were high school classmates, and he seems to have had a crush on her. However, to get her attention, he demeaned this factory. Enraged by his disrespect towards her father's factory, Catherine cut him off with a "Don't ever come near me again." Later, as adults, he found out his company was dealing with our factory, took charge of the account himself, and tried to approach her again, boasting about being a young executive. But she's already my wife now, and we have a child.
Driven by jealousy towards Justin, he's always been childish.
I can't believe I ever associated with such a guy.
We knew all this because Henry stormed into our factory one day, ranting about his circumstances without being asked, only to be chased off by our burly male employees. According to George, Henry was taken back to his rural hometown. After he barged in, we sued for business interference. Now he's just paying back the debts he incurred to settle the lawsuit, I learned.
Serves him right.
It seems his family back home is keeping a close eye on him. Now Megan and I can work in peace, and Catherine can focus on parenting.
Hey, Catherine, can I feed Yasmin?
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Megan has become quite attached to Catherine, actively helping with Yasmin, perhaps because she always dreamed of having a sister. Seeing her now, so different from before and sparkling with happiness, I felt confident in my decision. After overcoming these troubles, I continue to work hard every day. Megan, you've gotten quite skilled lately.
It's all thanks to everyone.
Megan has adapted well to her job and has become a vital asset to our team. Someone quietly watches over her efforts. Someone with a depth of affection Henry never had. It seems her days of happiness might not be far off. Well, I can't fall behind either. I have important family to protect too. I motivated myself, determined to keep striving for the family I need to protect and for our precious factory. If any problems arise again, I believe we can overcome them together.